Okay, so welcome to our Empathy Circle, and I'm Edwin Rutch from Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And we're going to have an empathy circle here on the topic of what are feelings of concern or excitement about implementing an empathy training at Ball State. And what we really want to do is give you a taste of the empathy circle process, which is kind of the core practice that we do, and I think is really one of the best starting points for setting up an empathy training. And so we want to just first start and go around and do introductions. Like I said, I'm Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I've been working about 11 years, 12 years on setting up this center and really trying to foster and build a more empathic culture and society. So then, Ingrid, would you like to go next?
Sure. I retired a year and a half ago from the Forest Service. Here, I'm in Boise, Idaho, and I was, so then I had more free time, and I had worked before in nonviolent communication. I was interested in that with Marshall Rosenberg, and then I really liked the empathy part and found Edwin on the website. And I do have a master's in adult ed from the University of Georgia, and so I've been trying to help Edwin some with getting some training going on.
Wayne?
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm Wayne Mock. I'm the senior developer. And
if you could speak up, you maybe get closer to the mic.
Yeah, I'll get closer.
Or turn the volume up. It's kind of
Can you hear me now?
Still a little soft. It's is there a volume control?
Not directly. Well, it's up.
It's okay.
What I have is up all the way. But
okay. If you just kind of stay closer to the speaker, the mic.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Wayne Mock. I'm the senior developer in the research and development area at Ball State University, and sometimes I was acting director. Our director search failed, so we have no director at the moment. Yeah, it's the possibility of doing this was brought to our attention by the executive director of our area, who is, his name's Rich. And I guess I sort of took the lead on it here because it was sort of assigned to me. And it's something that I'm very supportive of. I do have some questions, and we'll get to that in a few moments.
Okay, thank you. Angela?
Yeah, hi, I'm Angela Nicolai. I am the Strategic Learning Technologies consultant here. I work with Wayne and Gary as part of their team. And still trying to figure out kind of how this will fit into the SU. And at this point, it's kind of the end of the semester, so I'm a little frazzled at this point. So if I seem somewhat, distant, that's why. But just kind of curious to see the possibilities of how this would fit into the creative pedagogy project that we have here in terms of faculty development and some options in that area.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
I'm Gary Pavlechko. My title is Director of Interactive Learning Spaces. I too was brought in, like Wayne, onto the project to explore what was possible. Wayne and I have known one another for the 28 plus years that I've been at Ball State. He's been here longer. And he found Edwin. And by finding Edwin and Empathy Circle, it gave us an opportunity to begin our search into how to design an empathy structure that would be mobile for our campus in order to positively affect the concept of empathy for primarily students. And the way I look at empathy circle, elements of empathetic design, I think that it has a place in our learning spaces for which we are responsible for the design and research. And overall, I would like to be able to incorporate how stress reduction can have a positive impact on the college learner.
Okay, thank you. So we can jump right into the empathy circle process. And I don't know if I had a chance to look at the handout with the instructions on how to do it. So an empathy circle is a structured dialogue process. And we usually do it in small groups, anywhere from 2 to 6 people, sort of maximum. And if you have larger groups, we try to break into smaller groups. I find 4 people is ideal. And in this process, one person is the speaker, and they will select who they speak to, and they will speak about whatever is on their mind or the topic at hand. And the listener, then there's the person that they're speaking to, the listener, will reflect back their understanding of what the speaker has said. And then we're going to have time limits of 3 minutes to begin with. We might extend that to 5 minutes a little bit later. And so you can keep speaking until you feel heard to your satisfaction, like you don't have anything else to say, and then you can say, I feel fully heard, and that indicates it's a turn of the listener then to become the speaker, and they will select someone in the circle to speak to, and that person will reflect back until the speaker is either feels heard or the 3 minutes is up. And it basically, the process keeps going for the time allotted. We had set 90 minutes for this circle today. So we've got about an hour and 15 minutes left. And so a few tips is, the first tip is, as the speaker, you want to pause periodically to give the listener a chance to reflect back what it is they're hearing. Is Chris someone that?
Yes. Would you introduce yourself, Chris?
Oh. Chris, do you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, yes.
Oh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Turvey. I'm a software developer for the same department as Gary and Wayne. It's Department of Strategic Learning at Ball State. So. Okay.
So I was just explaining how the empathy circle works. I don't know if you saw the handout. You'll see how it goes too if you haven't read it, the instructions. So as the listener, you're wanting to reflect back in your own words. So this is some tips for the listener. Just reflect back in your own words what you're hearing the speaker say. You can sort of paraphrase what they're saying. You can sort of say word for word close to what they're saying. But the real goal is to reflect back to the speaker's satisfaction so that they feel like they are heard to their satisfaction. And if the speaker asks you a question, for example, you don't answer the question, you just reflect back what the question is, for example. So you're only just reflecting back what you hear the speaker say, but then when it's your turn, you can say anything you want. I mean, you're totally free to say whatever you want. Do you want to add anything, Ingrid? Any points that I may have missed here?
No, that's good.
Sure. So it's a simple process to get started, and the best way is just to do it and just to kind of learn by doing. And so we can get started. Our topic was, I'll read it out here, is what are feelings of concern or excitement about implementing an empathy training at Ball State University? So We could start with someone speaking to me, and then I can model the empathic listening, and you'll have 3 minutes. So who would like to start and speak to me? Okay, Wayne, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, as I said, I see this as something really valuable and potentially very useful at the university. My primary concern is whether empathic listening is a skill or a talent. And what I mean by that is, really, can a person who is not by nature empathetic really serve as a good listener? And there's a process, and maybe following the process is sufficient. I don't know. But
okay, well, let me reflect that back so far. So I'm hearing you think that the empathy could be beneficial, but you have a question or even a concern, wondering if empathy is a talent or sort of an inbred talent or a skill, and you're thinking, well, maybe just by doing the process you can learn it. So you're just having questions about that.
Right, and I would relate it to people sensing a difference between whether they're talking to someone who is actually empathetic or someone who is going through the steps, who might be sympathetic, feel for the person, but not be able to feel as the person actually feels. And I relate that to music. I mean, I nowadays I don't, because of physical limitations due to arthritis, but in the past I played piano, guitar, classic guitar, and I know for a fact that someone can play a piece, get all of the notes right, the timing perfect, but the emotion's not there. Another person plays the same piece and you feel it. And that's my concern. I'm not a particular, I would say I'm not emotionally empathetic unless I share some kind of experience with the person. I can be very sympathetic for them, but I'm not a natural empath. So if I'm in an empathy circle, I'm not sure if the fact that I may not be able to actually empathize with the person would reduce my effectiveness, or whether that is something that doesn't really matter.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you have concerns that maybe even concerns about yourself, like in an empathy circle. Are you really empathizing with someone, or just sort of having the form and you're creating a parallel to music? You can create music, but there's no emotional content to it. It's just sort of an empty form, and you're just having concerns about that.
Right.
Okay, and that was also the 3 minutes, the time. So
I forgot.
You want to keep time, Ingrid? I had a timer here.
Yes, I had it already, and I'm not used to doing it, and I just totally forgot.
Okay, well, I will speak to you then. So,
To who?
to you, Ingrid.
Oh, okay.
I also started the timer here. So, yeah, well, I'm really excited that Ball State is interested in empathy, and that's one reason I wanted to hold this circle, is to show this basic foundational process, which I think is a real gateway to kind of the whole empathy world. I mean, this is like start here and then, kind of go to the next step. So that's why I wanted to introduce everyone here to the process.
So I can sense there's a lot of excitement that you have about working with Ball State and what they're wanting to do related to the empathy circle, because you see that the empathy circle is really, it's like a gateway practice. It's the foundation.
Yeah, and it's this gateway practice that I'd like to spread as widely as possible, because it's very reproducible, and easily learnable, and it's a good starting place that anyone can use, and you can get immediate benefits from it, be it personal support, emotional support, or moving into conflict resolution as well. So you can get immediate benefits from it.
So you're really passionate about the empathy circle and all the benefits that that a person can get from participating in it and getting the practice.
And my hope is that, if Ball State gets interested in it, that they have resources to help move the empathy circle along. Because, you and I are developing training material, and it's like the more people we can get working on this, the more we can spread it, the more experience we can have, and the more it can kind of spread into the culture. Because I think this is important that we spread this skill and process and this way of being into the culture.
So it's really important to you that empathy is becomes kind of ingrained in the culture. It just becomes a part of who we are. And by having Ball State interested in it and taking some action in it, that really fits kind of your goal, because it's one step closer to getting it into the culture.
Yeah, and the area we've been focusing on is with the political divide, because that's a big problem in the country. So we're setting up empathy circles with the left, political left and right, and using this as a way of actually solving a social, cultural problem. But we need to scale up empathy circles to have, hundreds, thousands of people be able to facilitate them, and that it just becomes, something that anyone, can do, and that there's training material and resources for spreading this.
So you kind of started with doing the empathy circles related to the left, right, and the political divide. And you've seen that work be very effective, and you're wanting to scale it up, beef it up, do some more with resources. Get more resources and more training, and just to keep spreading the word.
Yep, I feel heard. And that was my 3 minutes.
Okay. So I don't know for sure what to talk about. I did hear when Wayne was talking.
Select someone.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to Gary. Are you ready?
I am. I'm writing notes, but yes, I am ready.
So it's always interesting when I heard Wayne talking and about. I'm looking at my notes here because I have to kind of remember. And you expressed concern about whether you can really be empathic, and if you compared it, Wayne compared it to like playing a musical instrument, that someone can know the technique, how to do that well, but in a way it's kind of like if their heart's not in it, it's not gonna be effective. So I'll stop there.
So, if I may be able to relate Wayne's concern and your reflection of that concern to my role at Ball State, I would say that the question is raised for me.
Oh, wait a minute. Gary, all you do is reflect back what you hear Ingrid say. What did you just hear Ingrid say? Just that's all you need at this point. Just
this isn't about you, Gary.
this is the practice. Just what, and if you don't know what it, if you say, just ask. If you kind of forget, or you say, "Oh, can you say that again?" You just so.
Really hard for me. Please tell me again what you said.
Okay. What I found Wayne's comment interesting, and I think it's kind of a common one too, about whether with empathy you can someone can know how to say the right words maybe, but if their heart's not into it, is it really effective? And he compared that to playing a musical instrument. Someone can, which sounds kind of similar, someone can play a musical instrument, use all the right techniques and everything, but kind of like if their heart's not into it, it's going to come out different.
So Ingrid, you have an understanding of Wayne's concern related to empathic listening, that it is but if it can it happen if for a person if there is no emotional connection to what is being said by a particular person.
Correct. That's right. That's exactly what I said. And how much time, Edwin?
Another minute.
Okay. And you know, I found myself even with doing it, it requires I have to enter an empathic space with the other person, but that just means listening to them. You know, it's just really being with them and listening to them. And even though in the back of my head, I'll have judgments, you know, if I observe my thoughts, I'll have judgments come out about what they're saying or agreeing with them or something. But so it's the connection is really important. You can't just go through the motions. That's was kind of disjointed. So.
Okay, you want to try to give a stab at reflecting that, Gary? What did you hear Ingrid say?
That that it is most useful for you, Ingrid, to find an empathic space in order to be able to be in the process of finding whether you are in agreement or not, and how judgment plays a role in your conversation and your effort to be an empathic listener.
That was pretty close, pretty close. Just to add some clarification, it's more that to be an empathic listener, I have to set aside all my judgments. I have to just set them aside. I have to set aside whether or not I agree with the person. I have to set aside, and that's really difficult. That's why I have to practice so much, because that's hard to do.
Do you feel, or I want to ask a question. So you feel that the issue of having preconceived judgment may impact your ability or inability to assist or help the person that has come to you?
Yes. Yes. I feel fully heard.
Okay, so Gary, it's your turn to select someone to speak to.
Chris. No, I don't want Chris. I want Angie. Angie, the issue for me has always been about supporting college teaching and learning how to become a better college teacher, to be a better educational developer for others who seek my expertise. Is it important or I feel that it is important for a teacher at whatever level to be an empathic listener in order to be able to know better what the student of the learning experience might be going through cognitively, socially, and emotionally.
Okay. I feel like I need to say, I hear you. Is that what we should say?
You can say, well, what I hear you say is.
What I hear you say is based on your values and beliefs of college teaching, that it is also important for a teacher to not only be a good teacher in the classroom in terms of content, but also to be aware of the various types of circumstances that students may be coming from and the types of issues that they might be bringing into the space.
That is quite accurate. And as the more years that I experience college teaching, I find that the student is seeking a more empathetic teacher who represents more humanistic qualities than a content expert.
So what I'm hearing from you is that there's been this change in higher education that is signaling a need for students to want to find more connections with faculty, not just on the content level, but on a personal level in terms of being able to relate to faculty from a more empathetic perspective.
That's most accurate. And in addition to this teaching behavior issue, I find it even more valuable that it becomes a part of the learning experience of the student, where we join and interconnect with all other aspects of college life that are related descriptively and sometimes unexplainably to the student in their daily lives in the number of years that they are members of our community.
So what I hear you saying is that from your perspective, empathy needs to not only permeate the classroom, but also the various aspects outside of the classroom for the student. So not just with their major or minor, whatever that may be, but also their social, their personal, their work, every aspect of their college life needs to be woven into this issue of empathy.
You've succinctly put my thinking onto a platter that has me most interested in trying to figure out why.
That's 3 minutes. Sorry, just want to finish that thought, but it's
why we continue to silo an educational community.
okay. Then it's Angela, if you want to, your turn to select someone.
I'm going to select Chris.
All right.
So I'm going to hop off of Gary's ending point of siloing, this idea of siloing within higher education. And I guess my thought would be is when we talk about siloing and where empathy fits in, is there a place for empathy in all classroom experiences? Or is empathy best found in disciplines where, as Gary has heard me say often, is it best in disciplines that tend to be more of the touchy-feely? How would you weave empathy in math? How would you weave empathy into chemistry? Yeah.
So what I've heard you said is your concerns are around empathies and how they fit into silos. That you believe that empathy may or may not have a place in every classroom, and maybe in just certain disciplines.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's where my question is. Because some would argue that my students need to know that 2 + 2 is 4. Why is it important for me to understand where they come from in order for them to get 2 + 2? So I'm kind of wondering, because I'm envisioning, in terms of this happening in these efforts in higher education, in terms of how we weave this into classrooms, I'm envisioning some pushback, because empathy goes back to Wayne's point, doesn't it have to come naturally? And if it's not in that faculty member's wheelhouse, they're going to have difficulty exploring that area outside of the content. Possibly.
So what I heard you said is empathy may not be needed in math per se, and empathy may be the center driver for be driven by the faculty in the courses, as the way that you stated that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So how do we, kind of tying Wayne and Gary's points together, how do you get them to see the relevance of empathy and really where we started if that's just not who they are?
So you would like to know how we would get empathy out of people that by their very nature are not empathetic.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. There we go. So I guess that'll take it to me, and I will just go full circle back to Edwin.
Okay.
So in what I've heard from everyone else say so far is that they have the concerns of empathy, and a lot of the word that I'm hearing is empathy, but a lot of it goes back towards mindfulness. And to me, it seems to be they're not that great of a difference. And from a software point of view, one of the things that I try to do is I always try to be mindful of the time and the way that the screen looks for my end users. And I think that even with Angela's points, that in every discipline, perhaps there could be a mindful or conversely, and there's such a minor difference between mindfulness and empathy in my mind that that mindfulness may be able to take place for empathy.
Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a relationship between mindfulness and empathy, and you're hearing empathy being used a lot, and perhaps the word mindfulness could be used instead because they're kind of the same thing or very similar.
Absolutely. You got that. But as far as it goes, everyone through the previous chats is having previous conversations with everyone outside of this on empathy. Because in the hall before I left for home because I had a thing, Wayne brought up the point of the 3 different types of empathy, and in the characterizations of them, to me, all still felt much other than one of them. They felt very much in the mindful manner.
Mm-hmm. So you're having a discussion with Gary, and what you were hearing as definitions of empathy also seemed like that was like mindfulness to you.
Well, and it was Wayne that I was having that
Oh,
conversation.
you're having it with Wayne. Sorry.
But and that's really about all my thoughts on that. I don't
Mhm.
need to burn up 3 minutes because I want to be mindful of your guys' time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to be mindful of the time, so you don't need the full 3 minutes. Okay, so you feel fully heard then?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll speak to Wayne. So addressing the first question about is empathy a skill or a talent, I think it's both. That it's that we can sort of rewire our brain to be more empathic. Like the more we practice it, the better we get at it. So I do think it's a learnable skill, and there's also been studies done at Stanford on this topic, and they're saying they're saying they had a yeah. So I'll just stop there. So I do see it's something that can be learned. I'll just stop there.
And a talent. So someone who's not naturally empathic could improve their skills in that realm, and that actually practicing empathic listening improves one's ability to become function as an empathic listener.
And then we can rewire our brain. So, the brain is plastic. It is malleable. You can create new circuitry. So from a physiological state that is, you can change.
And that's supported by studies. So how do you?
No. Okay, it's still my turn. So, no questions. So at Stanford, they also made the point that that if you think that empathy is learnable, it actually makes you take the effort to learn it. And if you think empathy is not learnable, it shuts people down from sort of taking the effort to learn it.
Believing is doing.
It helps, yeah. So I guess, yeah, so I'm making the case that from my own experience too, that I've gotten better at it. And, it's just by doing this practice of empathic listening is one skill. One practice that just do this on a regular basis and practice it, we get better at it.
Okay. The research and your experience both indicate that Übung macht die Meister. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, and in terms of the mindfulness, there's a real similarity with mindfulness. There's sort of like a compassion community, and they talk about mindfulness, but their practice tends to be meditation, withdrawal, be detached in your own, kind of observe your own processes, which, is good to be aware of that. But I would say that the empathy movement is more about the relationality. It's like listening to each other and sort of being mindful of each other. So they fit together. You have a mindfulness of what's going on in you, but also a mindfulness and a sensitivity to the felt experience of others. So,
saying that mindfulness practice is more inwardly directed, whereas empathy practice is outwardly directed.
Relationally, yeah, oriented. So yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. I'll direct myself towards Angela, and no, let me change that. I'll direct it towards Gary, given what I want to say. There, I think, Gary, that you tend to be far more empathic by nature than I am, and I wonder that if being naturally empathic might not actually be a negative factor in the practice of an empathy circle, because if you're, well, I could see someone who was naturally empathic, who didn't build a little bit of a wall, burning out when actually going through this practice.
So Wayne, you're referencing that my frustration with not being able to have free flow thinking and expression may be in regard to the empathy circle practice, might be a negative as to my, or related negatively to my innate ability to be empathetic.
Right. Yeah. That it could feasibly get in the way, and you also, from my experience with you, you not only tend to be emotionally empathetic, but compassionately empathetic, in that when you see a problem, you want to help. And that, to me, would seem to cause some frustration for you in an empathy circle, and that you can't just break out of the mold and give a person a hug and say, "I'm here for you."
Wayne, I've wanted to hug everyone, but I just can't lift my right arm anymore, and that's why I'm getting surgery on Monday. No, teasing. I'm sorry, Edwin. You have identified, I wonder, you've identified a frustration without necessarily being immediately in my space, but because you can see my my facial expression, you might be right on target. Thank you.
Did you feel heard, Wayne?
Yes.
Okay. Or it seems like there was more.
Oh, no.
Oh, you felt heard? Okay, then Gary, you select.
Ingrid, I need your help. I need your help because Wayne's perception of me is 100% accurate. This is not my natural way of demonstrating empathy. And I am too used to, again, I've mentioned this already, free flow thought, and I'm frustrated by the rigidity that I sense and feel that empathy circle is inflicting on me.
So you're right now the structure that the empathy circle is using feels really uncomfortable, and it almost goes against who you are as a person. You're much more open, like to be much more fluid.
Yes.
And so it's kind of bothering you.
It's bothering me to the point where I'm spending more time writing notes about my thinking than I am about how to be more effective in the process of empathy circle.
So you're finding yourself having to, you can't fully participate in listening because you just feel this need to take notes and take notes. So it's kind of this kind of a conflict there. You want to, the taking notes is getting higher priority than listening.
Yes, and I'm having, and the rigidity of the process that I feel uncomfortable following is not natural for someone who is naturally empathetic. Thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, so I'm going to reflect back that last part is that you are naturally an empathic person. Oh, my timer. Hold on. You are naturally an empathic person, and it's like this rigidity is totally the opposite of that, and it blocks you being empathic. And so it's almost going against the whole purpose of the empathy circle is keeping you from being empathic, which is your natural state.
Thank you for hearing me and giving me the impression that you understand my feelings.
Edwin? Oh,
Yeah.
I almost feel like I want, I'd like Angela to do more, you know, because I guess I want people in Ball State to talk more.
So you could speak to her and tell her that.
Okay, and then she gets to talk, so I can just talk for a little bit. I mean, it could be Chris, it could be anyone. Okay, Angela, I feel like the purpose of this circle is really to kind of demonstrate, and for you, all of you, to get an opportunity to practice. And it was really interesting to me what Gary just said, how he's noticing how it blocks him from doing what he feels is normally being a very empathic person.
Do you want to give her a chance to reflect that back?
Sure.
From what I'm hearing, you're curious about Gary's struggle with this whole idea of empathy circles, given his what comes most naturally to him, which is being an empathic listener.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it even makes me wonder if you know, a lot of the empathy circle is just reflective listening. You know, that's another word of using, because what we're doing here right now is strictly just reflective listening. We're trying to listen without judgments, without giving advice, without problem solving, because, you know, usually our immediate reaction when we are listening to someone is we're thinking about, oh, I want to, what advice can I give them? How can I share an experience I've had with them? And all those things block empathy. And you can try it in your own life, talking with someone, and just like today, the rest of the day, I'm sure all of you will go out and talk to someone, and you'll be talking, and all of a sudden they'll start giving you advice or trying to solve your problem, or dismissing it, what you're saying to them, and just notice in yourself how that makes you feel. It doesn't feel very good. You know, it stops me from wanting to talk to them. So that's a lot, what I just said.
So in addition to that, what I hear is that we tend to enter into conversations that if someone is talking to us, we want to put ourselves into those shoes. And oftentimes it's really about you're just wanting someone to listen. You don't want advice. You just want somebody to listen.
That's exactly right. And it's not taking their story away from them. It's not steering the conversation to what I want to talk about. It's staying present with them and what they are experiencing at that time. Because as soon as I try to problem solve or give advice or tell them my experience, I've taken it away from them.
So in addition to that, what you're saying is that it's really about them. That moment in time is their moment. It's their moment to themselves that they need. And that isn't the time for additional elements to come into the mix. It's about them. It's about what they need. It's about that they need to be heard.
Yes. And then do I have one more time? A little, see, I wasn't going to talk and
Yeah, finish that thought and that'll be the last.
So you had mentioned, Angela, about, whether or not this is more appropriate for the soft sciences and the hard sciences. And you mentioned about even a math class. And I thought one way I can see a professor using it is if when a student comes to them with they don't know how to do something. And if a professor uses empathic listening, because sometimes he'll come when he meets with the student, he'll already assume what the student is thinking or what the problem is. But if he really listens to the student, he can maybe get more clarity about, so this, when the student says the problem, he can say back, so this is what's going on. And then the student can clarify that, yes, this is the problem. And then they can go about figuring out how to solve it. I'm like if they come for help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I'm done.
Should I go?
It's your turn now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm actually going to throw this to Edwin because I'm sorry I have to step out. I have another meeting at 2. But I want to ask this point because this is something that I'm thinking of. A few weeks ago, a few of us from Ball State went to a kind of a higher ed seminar down in Indianapolis of how to have discussions about issues of inclusivity on college campuses. And so the exercise that they had went through is very similar to this. However, one of the things that they did say, which I'm curious to get your feedback, so I know you can't give it, but I'd be wonderful if you could maybe break from this for a second, is that they said that when these conversations are happening and when someone is talking, that the listener should not show any visible understanding, like head nods, nodding their heads, the hums, that they shouldn't show any positive or negative physical reaction to whatever that person is saying. So I guess my question, which I know that you really can't answer because you're supposed to be listening to me, is that also a philosophy of the empathy circle?
Okay. So you took a workshop and you're doing something similar, and they were saying in terms of like when you're speaking to me now, or the speaker or the listener shouldn't be making any signs that they're understanding or any kind of, or whatever like that. And so you're just kind of have a curiosity. Is that the same here in an empathy circle? And just
right.
And you are also realizing that I'm only going to be reflecting and not answering you too. So
yeah, I know, but I'd love to get it because I'm just not. That's what I was really wondering about because I found it odd in the seminar, but then I got it because with issues of race and those sorts of things, regardless of the perception of the individual, you don't want to give a positive or a negative reaction.
Yeah.
terms of these, and although they are not the same, these were just dialogues. In terms of the empathy circles as this community, is that something that we should also be cognizant of?
Yeah, so whether to give feedback or not that you're hearing or feeling or understanding someone, and you're just kind of wondering if we should be doing that. And you had a bit of understanding that in terms of dealing with like around racial issues, that you had some of an understanding for that within that context.
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel heard?
I do feel heard. And I'm sorry that I have to say goodbye, but Gary, Wayne, and Chris can catch me up. But this gave me a lot of food for thought, so I appreciate your guys' time.
Okay. You're feeling some gratitude and got food for thoughts. And so thanks for taking part in this.
Yes, thank you. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye. So I'll speak to Chris. So the kind of the core aspect of the empathy circle is for the speaker to feel like they're heard. So that's sort of the core nugget right there. The core is that as I'm speaking here, that I can feel like I've been heard and understood to my satisfaction. So that's kind of like the core of the empathy circle.
So what you're saying is that the speaker should feel like they're the core of the empathy circle when they're speaking.
Yeah, and whether somebody's nodding their head or whatever, the listener can kind of do what they would like in that sense in terms of whatever. But the core is if the speaker says, I don't really feel understood by what you're saying. Or I do feel understood. Even the listener could even just grunt, say, "Oh," and if the speaker says, "You got it, you hit it right at the nail on the head." So that's really the core of what we're trying to do here, is for the speaker to feel like they've been gotten, that they've been understood.
So going back to Angela's point, yes, the listener can react to a speaker that's speaking while they're speaking. But then once again, you reiterated the point that the speaker should once again feel like they've been heard and that they are the core of the empathy circle.
Yep, and this process is based on the work of Carl Rogers, who did empathic listening in the therapeutic realm. And it has taken, it's spread to the whole, therapeutic counseling. It's like the therapist just listens to the client, that's in this professional context. And they just listen to what the client says. They don't feel sorry for them. They don't identify with them. They just accompany them on their journey and just periodically reflect back what the speaker is saying, just to check that they're still with the person. So that's kind of like the foundation of what we're doing.
Okay. So this technique came from Carl Rogers, and it was used much in therapy. And the listener is more of a passive traveler with the speaker that is once again at the core of this process.
Yeah, and if you identify with the speaker and say, "Oh, I had that experience too," you're kind of like making it about you. It's no longer you're saying, "Hey, I'm not on your journey anymore. Let's go on my journey." And that's what a lot of these blocks to empathy is. It's trying to take instead of following the person on their emotional journey, their felt experience journey, it's saying, "Let's go to my journey." And so even sympathy, feeling sorry for someone can be saying, "Hey, let's go on my journey of feeling sorry for you," or something. So, yeah.
See that?
Yeah, I see. Thanks. Got it. Thanks.
The empathy should be once again about the user and the person experiencing it. Whether they get something out of it or not is more of a tertiary side effect, and they can take it as their own, but that's not necessarily something that has to happen.
Oh no! If you identify, if you're saying, "Oh, I had that experience too," then it becomes about you. So we're wanting to keep the attention and the focus on the speaker.
Right.
So just say, if you just say that last part, keep the attention on the speaker.
So once again, keep the attention on the speaker, keep them at the core of it. Don't make it about yourself, even if you do identify and can sympathize with what they're going through.
Right. Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you so much. Yeah. We could extend the time a little bit more, like almost 5 minutes per speaker. Usually just when we start with 3 to make sure, get everybody kind of involved. Then we kind of extend it a little bit. So we make it 5 now.
I'm going to go ahead and speak to Gary. So Gary, you're taking notes still, or? When we first started, Edwin had questions and concerns with the Ball State adoption of our of this empathy process, and so when I heard his questions about that, my concern towards that goes towards some of the people in the administration that might want the empathy circles might be doing this for cynical reasons. Maybe to replace the traditional health center, centered focused, the thing that we have in the counseling center.
I understand that your concern is more about the administration's action or positive action toward empathy huts, empathy constructed environments to be a replacement, not in addition to the counseling center and what it does in its operation.
Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, as far as it goes, I have that is my biggest concern for the time being. The other thing that's kind of weird for me is most of the time when I do talk in front of people, and as opposed to this sort of process, it's that I'm using those once again, going back to the this came from the therapeutic region. I'm using the I feel like, and it's because my son has autism. I've been to a few of the meetings where we kind of do this, where everything has that that feeling to it. It's a this is not my normal style that I feel most comfortable presenting in.
So if this process does not seem to be as natural to you as you would like, you're feeling that you may or may not be able to fully capitalize on the process in order to help others.
That seems about right. Yeah. And even though we're going for the 5-minute thing now, I feel like I've been going up. But we're good. No,
I'm dying at being able to just.
For the most part, I'm a slower thinker than most people, so I'm gonna like Gary move forward.
And because of who I am and because of the time.
Who are you speaking to?
Oh gosh, I'm out of the circle right now. I apologize because I know people here have, even though we were supposed to go, I'm asking if we may break from the circle.
To stop the circle, or just speak without using empathic listening, or?
Yes, to speak without using empathic listening in order to gain a better understanding of where we are right now from the Ball State end, and as well from the Berkeley and Boise locations as we continue to prepare for the next step here at Ball State.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you would like to sort of break from the reflective listening or the empathy circle process to just discuss like where we are with Ball State and the kind of the Berkeley group, and kind of just to kind of discuss where we're at.
Yes, in order to be able to come to a determination as to what we possibly can take from this and report back to others who are interested in this process.
So you're wanting to like break from the process just to have a discussion, because you'd like to gather some material, some insights to take back to others to kind of report to them.
That is correct. Thank you. You have expressed, acknowledged my my concern for time and my reason for my original request to break from the circle.
Okay, so you feel like I understood that you have a concern about time, and that's why you're wanting to break from the circle. So,
you have it targeted right on.
Are you feeling some anxiety or concern about the circle process, or?
No, it's just that now my professional duties have been added to, and therefore, in order to be able to keep this activity, not an issue in a bad way, but this project moving forward, I'm just wondering if we from Ball State can have an open dialogue with you and Ingrid to be able to help us with next steps.
Okay, so you would like a more open discussion, kind of outside of the empathic listening process, to think about next steps to do with for Ball State.
You have precisely identified my interest.
Okay, and is there more? Or
I am good.
Okay, well, I'll speak to Wayne. What we're doing is the empathy circle process, so it is sort of a structured process that we will stay in, and unless everybody agrees to stop the process. Oh, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, you're saying we'll stay within the process as defined unless everyone is willing to break out of the process.
Right. Because that was sort of our agreement. So, what we can discuss, what I'm hearing is that Gary would like to say, well, what's sort of the next step to do? And we can certainly discuss that within the empathic listening process. Like, what do we do now? How could we take steps going forward?
Okay. You're saying we can continue the empathic listening process and still address Gary's concerns.
Right. And I'm kind of noticing my own felt experience, like, oh, here's a situation I hadn't kind of come across, like, oh, let's stop the circle. We agreed we're going to do a circle, and then somebody says, let's stop doing the circle and not do it anymore, which was our intention. So I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety in myself, kind of thinking about, well, how do we kind of navigate this process,
You've never really experienced this before, that someone wanted to break out of the circle and discuss things in a non-empathic way.
Yeah, it's so I'm dealing with it by staying within the process and having you reflect my concerns. So.
Okay, so you're using the structure of the circle to allay your own anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah, to air my own anxiety. So I'm not sure how much time I have, but it is the empathy circle. The empathy circle from, I mean, I've been doing this for about 11, 12 years now, is the best process as a gateway process that I have found for actually practicing empathy. And it can be difficult, it can be hard, it can be painful because it's shifting sort of our way of thinking. And so, you know, that's sort of part of it too.
You have faith in the empathy circle process, given your long involvement in the process, and you really think that it is the best way to continue.
That I know of, yeah. So yeah, I feel heard with that. So that's my 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll address Gary and try to address some of your concerns, Gary. Fill other people in, still staying within the empathy circle. Right now, we know we do not have the funding for an empathy tent. We do have faculty who are extremely interested in using an empathy process within classrooms.
Wayne, you and I are in agreement. We have common knowledge that there is no money to pursue at this point in time, no agreement of dollars to pursue the Empathy Tent initiative, but you've expressed a positive reason as to why we should bring empathy circle pedagogy into our creative pedagogy project.
Right, and we also have people in our College of Architecture and Planning who are interested in discovering what features within a space could increase empathy and empathetic listening.
The CAP College of Architecture and Planning interest in studying the effects of empathic listening and behaviors from a teaching perspective as well as an administrative perspective may, according to your thinking, have a direct impact on our Cap Gensler study of behaviors in the collaborative studio environment.
Right. And to some extent, I'm trying to help you find your way towards the next steps that we can take. We probably have to reach beyond our own environment in order to do that, and involve other people, Vanessa, Amand, and others, in exploring the use of empathetic listening in classroom learning and other environments.
You're thinking that Vanessa's telecommunications upper level course might be a specific course of study in our creative pedagogy project that we might explore empathic listening as a pedagogical approach.
Right. And one of the things that we need to do, especially from the standpoint of research and development, is to decide to specify outcomes, be they learning outcomes or emotional outcomes or things that have been shown to relate to student retention as goals that we can attempt to achieve, and specify how to measure those things, and preferably in the short run with related items, and with long-term studies, find out whether this effort actually has the effects we would like to see.
Your concern about research and development becoming involved in a social psychology concept being brought into a telecommunications course could possibly have impact on what we do from this point on with regard to empathy within the learning space, as opposed to empathy within an external location and environment, of which we have no physical space control.
Right. So there are multiple things we need to look at. We need to decide what we can study, what the value of that is, and in the short term, perhaps student surveys would suffice to indicate whether we're moving in a proper direction. But long term, we definitely need to be able to specify the outcomes that we expect, and then determine whether we're actually meeting those outcomes.
We know you and I are in agreement, and I hope that you are expressing a keen interest in being able to create the study, that format that will allow us to be able to present our data, particularly in relation to student participation, retention within the class, and persistence in progressing steadily toward positive outcomes.
Yes.
That was 5 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, I feel heard.
So can we, in the remaining 7 minutes, I need to ask, let me break out.
Okay, well, we could stop here and just take, I'd like to get one round of just feedback on the process, if we could, a quick